It is said that ancient Greece is the birthplace of civilization. And I think that we can take some lessons, and cyber criminals can take some lessons, from ancient Greece to enhance what we are doing today. So I'm going to walk you through half an hour of classical literature, but at the same time, we will find some lessons from ancient Greece, because these guys were inventors. They gave us arch bridges. They gave us amphitheaters. The ancient Greek gave us democracy. They gave us alchemy, an attempt at science, let's say. The democracy was an attempt too. Good for them for starting it out. They definitely gave us philosophy. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. We remember all of these names. Did they give us cyber? Well, the ancient Greek word kubanao meant to command a ship. It actually meant to command a great and terrifying technology. The technology was a ship. Can you imagine 3,000 years ago tying pieces of wood together and sailing across the ocean? So it would have been a very terrifying technology. So it meant to command people within this technology. And Kubernetes was a steersman. Now, the term made a comeback in the 1940s after Alan Turing invented the computer, and it applied to both animals and machines, because of course the Turing test was the first real artificial intelligence test that we still use today. And so, Kubanao is the origin of the term cybersecurity. So, let's stick with the ancient Greeks and Greek mythology and the Greek gods to see if we can't extract some lessons from them today so that we can be more secure tomorrow. When I think of Greek mythology, the first person to come to mind isn't a Greek god. It's actually a man called Sisyphus. Now, Sisyphus did what we all hope to do, which is stand up against the gods. To stand in the face of the gods and say, I defy you. I defy this weak and humble human condition. I want to become a god. And Sisyphus cheated death not once, but twice. Now, when he finally succumbed to that unfortunate appointment to which we are all born into, Zeus was angry that he had done this. And so he punished Sisyphus with a very cruel and unusual punishment. He made Sisyphus roll a heavy boulder up an incredibly steep mountain. And when the boulder got to the top, it rolled back down again. And he had to roll it back up again, and so on and so forth for eternity. Now, this sounds kind of similar to the life of the CISO and those in cybersecurity. Every day you wake up and there are new threats. Every single time you go to bed, that boulder rolls back down the hill and you wake up and there's something new. We at Checkpoint, for example, have a database, our Indicators of Compromise database, of over 90 billion today. We're actually kind of a small company when you think about it for such a massive database. We have about 6,800 employees. We have about 100,000 customers. Now that's millions, and that's tens of millions of people, and it's millions of gateways. But to have an indicator database of 90 billion is unbelievable. We pass 4 trillion access logs every single day. Compare that to the number of Google searches. That's for the whole world. Pretty much the whole world has access to the internet. There are 6 billion internet searches every day. That's Google. We have 90 billion. And I say we, I mean you, with us. We publish all those IOCs for free, by the way, so even if you're not a Checkpoint customer, you can take advantage of those and pull those into your logs. So with this Sisyphean task of rolling a boulder uphill every single day, we have realized that our meaning and our purpose, just like Sisyphus, is in rolling that boulder. Because Sisyphus eventually found happiness in his punishment, in this cruel and unusual punishment. And really, it's because of a unique irony. You can probably think of much better things to do for a living, most likely, than this Herculean task of constantly pushing back threat actors. But in actual fact, if you think about your profession chooses you, not the other way around. This is an illusion. We were drawn into technology because we are technologists. It's the way we think. We lean into things like security. I'm inherently a fairly insecure human being, and therefore I love straight lines and borders. Right? I love firewalls. I love separation. I like to know where everything is. if you look back on your life, you will realize that all the decisions you think you made that have culminated to bring you into this very room today, to the seat that you're sitting in right now, have been because you have been called to this cruel and unusual punishment. And it is, in fact, just like Sisyphus, we are standing up against the gods and we are saying no. No to the threat actors, right? No to anything that might give us cause for insecurity, which is why we're in this particular field. So one of the ways you can reduce the size of that boulder that you roll uphill is an argument that we have been having for almost 30 years. So our founder, Gil Schwed, who is still the CEO of our company today, has been making an argument against the face of industry analysts, and I will have to say also the marketplace. And the argument is this: prevention, not detection. It's all very well to prevent all the known threats that come to your door. Building firewalls is a fairly easy thing to do, or building a perimeter for you. You understand how to do this. But we block from those 86 billion, that's the exact number, IOCs that we have in our database, we block 7,000 new and never before seen attacks every day. That's 7,000. So our argument to you and to the marketplace is that you cannot only block the known threats and then let in anything that's unknown and then attempt to mitigate the damage if there is a disaster. We say block all the unknown, and if there's a false positive, it's like pick your poison. You don't get to not roll a boulder up the hill. Then block all unknown threats and the ones that may well be false positives, and you will have them. That's the unfortunate elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, right? You will have false positives. The question really is, how do I not experience the same false positive twice? And then how do I ensure that I mitigate any potential damage from that false positive? And you do that, by the way, through the zero trust architecture, which we call the infinity architectural model. Okay. So in the Greek story of creation, Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus had been assigned the task of giving traits to all living creatures on Earth. So to some animals, they gave wings to fly. Other animals, fur to keep them warm. By the time they got to a man, they had run out of gifts. And so feeling sorry for how pathetic and weak and how our soft underbelly we are, we don't have horns, we don't have claws, we don't have fangs. How are we going to defend ourselves in this brutal and cruel world? So Prometheus stole fire from the gods at Mount Olympus and gave it to man. Zeus was angry at Prometheus and man for accepting this gift. And so he created the first woman, the beautiful Pandora. And he sent Pandora down to Earth with a box which she must never open. But of course, curiosity killed the cat. And so she opened this box, and from within came all manner of evil that we see in the world today. Disease, temptation, deception. And the last of these evils that Zeus gave to humanity was hope. Hope. That's right. Is it not hope when people open up their Pandora's inbox and they decide to click on that attachment because they hope that, well, I didn't order anything from FedEx, but my birthday's in a month, so maybe somebody sent me something and I need to verify my address. I better click on this. Is it not hope that keeps all of us moving forward in the direction that the threat actors deceive us through social engineering to take? I think it is. And so inside Pandora's inbox is all manner of evil. Today we see threats, as I say, 7,000 new ones every single day, zero-day threats. Some of it zero-day malware, others just reinvented ways to engage in a threat action. Ransomware, for example, is obviously prevalent today. But up until, well, maybe 10 years ago, whenever we had the first ransomware event, threat actors figured out a new way to attack our systems. And that's part of the 7,000 that we see every single day. In 2021, over 80% of malware started with a phishing attack from a malicious email, mostly about the pandemic or some other event. Black Friday shopping, Cyber Monday, Valentine's Day, Christmas, these types of things. The most imitated brands of 2021 were Microsoft, Google, WhatsApp, and with Microsoft, Office 365. Just last week, my researchers published a new article stating that LinkedIn today is the most imitated brand for threat actors to use to socially engineer people. Now, if you think about it, it's much more profitable for a threat actor to use LinkedIn. Who's on LinkedIn compared to Facebook? Facebook, my mum's on. Now, she might be worth maybe $400 of Bitcoin if you manage to get her. But if you get the CEO of your company, well, that person might be worth $400,000 of Bitcoin. So LinkedIn is a much better farming area for the threat actors to take on. So quick tips, if you go to your CEO's LinkedIn page, click on contact details, I'll bet you 50% of them have their personal email address right there. And is that something that is your responsibility? I'm going to argue a case, I might not have enough time, that it is. And so I've started to see this new title, BISO, Business Information Security Officer. A friend of mine, she used to be a colleague of ours, she was the CISO at AMC Theater, so shout out to Brittany Oppenheimer. When she was the CISO of AMC Theaters, and this is the holy grail of what all of you want to achieve, what I'm about to tell you. AMC Theater has like a club, you know, so if you want to get, I don't know, 10 free movies a month or whatever, you give these people $10 and you get a bag of popcorn and 10 free movies, whatever that club is, right? A loyalty program. And what they were finding is that their loyalty people were pretty much having the same experience as everybody else, and so why join the club? I mean, I've got my phone and I turn up, but I've still got to line up and get my ticket, I've still got to line up and get my popcorn even though it's free. So the experience wasn't great. So Brittany, being a smart CISO that she is, said, well, hang on, I've got all the access identity management software. I own all of that. So she went to her marketing department at AMC Theater and said, how about we see if we can use my technology to identify all of those loyal club members as they come into the theaters. And that's what they did. So through some kind of Wi-Fi or beacons, whatever it might be, every time somebody who is part of their club walks into a theater, they don't have to go to the check-in and get their ticket. They just grab their bag of popcorn and walk straight into the theater. Now, the department of the CISO has suddenly become a cost benefit to the company. There. That's the holy grail, and that's what BISOs are to do. She is now the BISO of a Fortune 50 company in the world, Cardinal Health, to do exactly the same thing. And this is the maturity that our industry absolutely needs. We need to move ourselves out from under, sorry if there's any CIOs in the room, out from under the CIO, reporting to the CEO, perhaps with a dotted line to the general counsel, because general counsels deal in risk. We deal in risk. We are not necessarily technologists first. We are risk mitigators. So that is the maturity that we need to fight for in our industry so that we can move ourselves out from being this black box of expense which people don't understand. All right, back to the Greek gods, my friends. And so with LinkedIn being a tool for deception, and of course, phishing leads to malware, which leads to Trojans. This tool of deception, back to the Greeks, is like a Trojan horse, right? It's a fake domain, right? The walls we have built in the last 25, 30 years of being in this industry are rock solid. These are thick castle walls. People aren't brute forcing these walls. What a joke. Much easier to deceive somebody through the Trojan horse. And so, as you know, the war between the Greeks and the Trojans went on for years after Paris, the Prince of Troy, abducted Helen of Sparta. So Agamemnon brought his armies to the shores of the Trojans, but after decades of war, they still couldn't penetrate the walls. So as you know, the Greeks left after building this gift for the Trojans, the horse being the symbol of Troy. why they accepted it, like LinkedIn being a symbol of business networking for people within our industries. Hidden within were a team of assassins, and as soon as the Greeks had brought the horse inside the walls, the assassins crept out at night and looked for vulnerabilities so that they could bring the Greek army back into the Trojan Empire. So we found a Trojan Advanced threat about a year ago. This one was from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Mongolia. Now, the attack started with a lure document. This was an interesting one. It was written in Mongolian, allegedly coming from the Mongolian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it was giving information about COVID-19 prevalence. And it was dated back to 2020, when any information about COVID was being looked at, because we didn't know back then. So while it looked like a plain text document, it had been weaponized to include an exploit for rich text format vulnerabilities. Now, after the RTF document exploits the machine, a malicious dynamic link library is dropped into the WinWord startup folder, meaning that anytime Word is started, it would execute. Then it downloads and executes the next stage DLL from the attacker's file server, which then downloads and executes a third and last DLL, which is the actual malware payload. So a Trojan horse within a Trojan horse, as it were. The malware was fairly straightforward, stealing things like screenshots and the such like. Well, Trojans are obviously one way to hack, but I'd also mentioned there are also vulnerabilities. Well, Achilles was the greatest warrior in the entire Greek Empire. When Achilles was born, his mother Thetis was given a prophecy, which said that Achilles would grow up to be the most magnificent warrior, but he would die young in battle. Loving her child, she dipped Achilles into the river Styx, holding him by the ankles, the only vulnerability left on his body. Well, Achilles did, in fact, grow up to be the greatest of all Greek warriors, but after he killed Hector, the prince of Troy, Paris sought revenge. Now, one of the gods snitched and told Paris about his vulnerability. And so Paris came along with his marksmanship of his bow and arrow, and he shot a poisonous arrow through the heel, through the Achilles of Achilles. Insider threat, those gods snitching, hey? Insider threat's an interesting thing. There's two forms of insider threat, intentional and non-intentional. Now, the intentional, we caught a guy here recently. This is kind of a fun story. I don't have a timer up here, but I'm just going to keep going until Kim comes back in the room. So we caught this guy. He was working at an aviation company, and his role was actually to produce how-to-fix-it videos that they would then publish on their corporate YouTube channel for their customers to view around the world so that they could fix these, it was gas turbines. Now, he was actually embedding documents within these watchable videos. This is called stenography. And they were being downloaded in China, reverse engineered, and that's how they were stealing the intellectual property of this company. We found him because threat actors are greedy just like anybody else. Let's say he produces, I don't know, 2-3 videos a week. I don't know what the actual statistics were. Detection engines then saw that he was starting to produce 8, 9, 10 a week. And all it said was, hey, look, eyes. Put eyes down here. This is an anomaly. That's all. And after some forensics, this is how this man was discovered. Then there is also non-intentional insider threat. Passwords would be a big one. I'll give you a little hand on this one. This is what we need to educate our users with, because this whole alphanumeric business was a waste of absolute time and energy. In fact, the guy that invented the alphanumeric password wrote an op-ed as an apology. He did. He wrote an apology. You can go Google this thing. It's 10 years old already. He wrote an apology saying, that was the worst way to do it. I'm sorry. He's a PhD that was given a QWERTY keyboard and said, hey, come up with the toughest thing you can possibly come up with. So there it is. In fact, it's been proven by the University of Columbia that a passphrase is more secure and it's more easily remembered. So for example, this is Eddie's password is a long passphrase. That is more secure than an 8-digit alphanumeric. But we're stuck with this nonsense because all of us put systems in place to have it. So this is what you tell your users. It's very easy. Every word in the English language has a vowel or a vowel sound, right? A, E, I, O, U. Just replace those 5 with numbers and digits. That's it. You just have to remember 5. And then every time you type your passphrase in, so it could be "this is Eddie's password," for every vowel, you just put in your symbol. There, done. So then people remember it. Otherwise, people use the same password everywhere. That's your vulnerability. We have detection software that can detect that, by the way. So if they are using the same password, we'll block that from happening so you don't share corporate passwords on your Gmail account, for example. I'll tell you about our research group and a case study on a vulnerability that we found. So we have a group of about 300 or 400 what we call offensive cyber operators. They all sit in our Tel Aviv office. And Kim, I'll need about a 5 and a 10 minute, just so you give me the symbols. And so these guys, that's a nice way, by the way, of me saying offensive cyber operators are white hat hackers. These people go on the dark web every day. They assume a persona of an avatar of a terrorist or a criminal, and they befriend the threat actors down there so that they can see what's going on. So CPR, we call them, Checkpoint Research, found the first ever remote code execution vulnerability in a public cloud. It was in Microsoft Azure, which received the highest possible severity rating of 10. Our researchers basically found a way to run an Azure function that would get access to all other functions running on the same machine. In other words, they were able to break the walls between different cloud users and get read access and modify the user's activities. They also discovered SIGRID, and you can go to research.checkpoint.com, so it's research.checkpoint.com, and you can find all of this literature, all published free of charge. And you'll read about SIGRID, which was also a 10 out of 10 severity remote code execution vulnerability, this time in the WinDNS servers. The vulnerability affects practically every Windows network environment, and it's wormable, meaning that it can move laterally from one machine to another. So another Achilles heel we found was 400 vulnerabilities in the chipsets, because we look at hardware as well as software, in the chipsets of mobile devices, right? Vulnerabilities right in the chips. 400 vulnerabilities in these chipsets. Okay, I need to move on pretty quick, I think. So let's talk about some threat actors, starting in ancient Greece. This is Narcissus. Now, Narcissus was a handsome, talented, but unkind and cruel man. One day, Narcissus was out walking in the woods, and he sensed that he was being followed, and he was, by a nymph called Echo. After a while, he called out and said, "Who's there?" And Echo was following him and had fallen in love with how beautiful this man looked. She came out of the woods and attempted to embrace him, but he harshly rejected her. And she fell back into the woods, heartbroken in despair, only echoing other voices for the rest of her life and all of eternity. Well, the god of revenge, Nemesis, saw this, and she was angry. She was angry that he had treated this innocent nymph so harshly. And so she sought revenge and punished Narcissus. She made Narcissus fall in love with his own reflection by a pool of water. And there he stayed because he couldn't move away from his own love with himself. Threat actors are a lot like Narcissus, in love with their own image, and we have caught them in many ways specific to how Narcissus was punished. We were actually approached, in this case, by the Trinidad and Tobago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago. They were experiencing a defacement attack on their websites, and it was done by a threat actor called Vanda the God, not a Greek god in this case. Now, Vanda was very proficient in defacing these websites. 5 minutes, man, thank you. He had also defaced websites in the Brazilian government and had also done some activism work on the Brazilian rainforest and some Brazilian universities. So when analyzing his avatar, we found that according to the Who Is data, he's from Uberlândia, Brazil. Now, could have been fake. His email address was also used in registering the Brazilian cyberarmy.com. And so we found his Twitter and Facebook feeds under fake names. But we also found other social media posts on the Cyber Army with the words MR, or the name MR, not Vanda the God. So we decided to cross-post between these accounts, and we found out through him showing off his gaming skills in YouTube, looking into the reflection of the water, as it were, that he had the same background posted in other images of his defacement campaigns. We contacted the Brazilian police, and this man is now in jail. So it looks like Nemesis, the goddess of revenge, helped us get these guys looking in their own reflection in the mirror. Well, look, no good deed also goes unpunished, ladies and gentlemen. Prometheus was punished by Zeus for giving us fire. And the punishment was that an eagle would eat out his liver, and at night his liver would grow back. And then the next day, the eagle would eat it out again. We have to pick our poison. And this is what we do. This is in the human condition. We stand up against all odds, as it were. I mean, just try laying down. Death will come. It takes effort to be alive, in any sense of the imagination. And the effort to which we have been chosen by this industry, cybersecurity, in order to keep other people safe, is a Herculean or Sisyphean task, rolling this boulder uphill. The reason Zeus was so angry at giving us fire is because fire gave us technology. Fire essentially gives humans a choice between good and evil. Fire gives us the atom bomb. Fire keeps us warm and gives us all the technology that we use today. You have already been chosen and, in fact, chosen your task. You have chosen the good. It's why we are on this side of the firewall, as it were. But we can reduce the load of that boulder. And we suggest reducing the load by reducing the noise. A prevention versus detection methodology means that you will have less technology in your data center. That is a good thing. We surveyed customers around the globe, and we surveyed over 1,000 enterprise accounts. On average, they had 60 cybersecurity vendors. I've been in the game for almost 20 years. I just walked through this hall. I hardly know any of these vendors now. There's so many. And when you have that many vendors, how are you going to make sense out of all of that noise, all of those blinking lights? Our argument is this. Our CEO says you can get your vendors down to 4. I don't have the guts to state that. I think you can get them down to under 10. I really do. And when you do, you have less noise to push up the hill. And when you do this in a prevention manner and develop a culture, and this is where our industry needs to go. We need to be the ones that change the culture in our organizations, because the culture needs to be this. Hey, when we experience a false positive, this is what you need to do. Follow this chain of command, and then everything will be okay. Better that than to let in the unknown threats and then scramble because you cannot have an action plan for what you don't know. So that's our argument. We've been in the game for 30 years and have secured the globe's Fortune 100 for that 30 years. You know Check Point. You've heard of us. Love us, hate us. You've had a good experience with us. You've had a bad experience with us. We are here to stay, and our argument is simply that we can envelop 90% of all of your security needs, and then you might need to pick up a couple of other vendors to help you out with that other 10%. We have a booth outside here. We also have some giveaways that my colleague at the back is holding up, some mildly cool giveaways. But come to the booth and talk to us, and we'll give you a free security assessment, and we'll show you that you can do most of what you need to do in life using one technology. So with that, I thank you for what you're doing.
We do have a virtual question.
Oh yeah, sure.
The virtual question is from Terry. So what precautions would you advise relevant to using LinkedIn?
Well, so certainly what you need to do is send out a memo to your entire organizations right now and say, hey, look, if you go to your own LinkedIn page and click on that contact details, are all your contact details there? Most likely they are. And there's just a button in LinkedIn that they need to click. So I would send out a memo. I would figure out first how, and then take screenshots, how you can just click that button so that it doesn't show email addresses, because this is, your threat actors obviously using that all the time, and typically it's personal email addresses, because people like to get calls from recruiters on LinkedIn, so they want to go into their personal email, right? And your personal email is something that you're less guarded about, so that would be one way to do it. Another way to do it, take a look at mine. Mine's very easy. Edwin-Eddie Doyle, Manhattan. Obviously, being a security company with head office in Israel, we are some of the most highly targeted people around the world. So if you look at my LinkedIn, you're not getting much information on me. You know how everybody, it's basically an online resume. Why would you do that? Why would people put their entire resume online, their entire life story? That's bizarre to me. So what you need to do is just have bullet points. And so you can compare it to mine. Here's what you could do. Go to mine, make yours look like mine, and then compare yours to the CEO's, and you'll look like a hero. I'll take gifts anytime on that one. Right, so that's one thing you need to do with LinkedIn, or just delete it. Is it that helpful? Any other questions? Anything else? Beautiful. Listen, I really do thank you for the work that you're doing. Keep rolling that boulder up the hill. We want to share that burden with you. Thank you for your time.
Okay.